Aloha, my name is Alakai Lastimado, and welcome to Understanding West Maui. Here today we have author of Whose Future? Community Planning in West Maui, Lisa Eller. Aloha, Lisa.
Aloha.
Welcome.
Thank you.
First off, can you go ahead and just tell us the central theme of this book, what this book is about?
This book is about community planning in West Maui. It's about, public processes like these happen all the time in Hawaii. And this particular one, it had been 30 years since the plan was updated last. And prior to that, the last plan really shaped West Maui as it is today. So the plan is really important to the future of West Maui.
So what inspired you to go ahead and write a book about this?
What inspired me to write about this is, while these public processes are happening all the time in Hawaii, they are important things are happening in them, but not everybody knows. And yet the decisions that come out of them impact all of us. And so, being that the update from the West Maui plan hadn't happened in so long, it was just important to record what happened here, who was involved, and use it as a form of informing and educating the public about it.
Now, is there anything personal that you experienced that made you, or maybe influenced this book that you've gone through personally?
So I started off my career as a newspaper reporter. And so I covered these kinds of public meetings in Hawaii and then later in Colorado for several years. And the common theme that I saw play out is that while a lot of public input went into the process, the decisions that were made in the end didn't necessarily reflect what the citizens wanted. And so I always have that experience over the years, and it's been kind of interesting to watch and see how it played out, and yet nothing changed about the public processes. And so I saw this in different states, and I always wondered why that was and what we could change about it. And then also now as a parent, I have a 12-year-old boy, and my husband and I are really involved in the community as volunteers. And so we really care about our community and what happens to it and our neighbors and our family and friends. And even though these public meetings are important, they're long and they could be boring, but the things that happen in them matter and will impact all those people that I care about. So I feel more invested now than ever in what happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to back up a little bit. You said that you were a news reporter or a newspaper reporter. Excuse me. How is writing a book different than writing a story for a newspaper? Tell us that process, or how is it different?
Well, so I worked for a daily newspaper. So every day you're writing at least one story, maybe multiple stories a day. So you don't really get time to follow a project, a plan, or even a person over a long period of time. Usually when we covered public meetings, we just kind of dropped into it for one day. Maybe a couple of weeks later, we go in again and write about it. But never have I followed something like this from beginning to end, which I got to with the book. And that also working in a newspaper, you have limited space. So you can't always share everything that's been said, even though you want to. But in this book format, I could just let the voices be heard completely. So there were, really long quotes that were intact in the book. And I didn't get the luxury of doing that when I was a reporter. And I think that's really important to give context. Yeah. And
sorry. No.
I was going to say.
No, go ahead.
Also, I think with public meetings like this, if you just go into one meeting, you don't really get a whole picture of what's happening, of the power dynamics at play, of the people involved. It's only when you follow the whole time that you get to see who shows up time and again, how they're interacting, how they're trying to control the process. And so I think in that sense, it was different.
So you said that showing up to one meeting, you won't get everything. How long did it take for you to, go to these meetings, and how long did it take you to write this book?
It took me about 1.5 years to write the book.
Okay.
And I actually wrote the book after the meetings were done. So I didn't attend the meetings. But what I did was I had all of the recordings sent to me, and then and it was 50 meetings, 50 public meetings, so a lot. And a lot of them were several hours long. And I had a software transcribe the meetings, and then I listened to all of them. And then from that, I reported what happened over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what years does this book cover?
The first public meeting happened in 2019, and then it was finally adopted by the Maui County Council in 2021.
Oh. So can you tell us a little bit what was unique about those periods from 2019 and the process, the public meetings and the process?
Well, the biggest thing that was special, I guess, about this time is that it was during the COVID pandemic. So it was at the height of the pandemic. It was, the meetings had to go online, and that actually allowed more people to participate via, phone, to be able to call in, to be able to connect to these meetings. And I think it was also a time where, like all of us, probably including you and I, were thinking really deeply about like where our lives were going, where our communities were going. And in West Maui in particular, because tourism stopped during the pandemic, people were really looking at, hey, how can we diversify our economy so we're not so reliant on tourism? So I think that helped open up the conversation even more.
So I know I'm gonna bring up because it's during COVID.
Yeah.
Things were online, Zoom meetings or things like that. There's a thing that kind of happens that people say that it's easy to hide behind a computer.
Yeah.
Did you happen to find that people were more outspoken and spoke more and were more willing to fight on things because of being able to? Did you see that? Or
what I saw more from like the meetings opening up virtually is that you heard from new people, because sometimes with these public meetings, the same people show up and are involved. And so as I was tracking it, when that option became available, you started hearing from folks that you didn't necessarily hear from before, who are probably working, busy parents, or just, not able to attend during the times that these kinds of meetings normally happen. And I think, just to go back, sorry, to your last question, the other thing that was unique about this period is that climate change was really impacting, well, everywhere, but in the way that it was impacting West Maui was that the main highway that runs throughout the area, it would periodically be submerged underwater, and the traffic was really bad and backed up. And so the people that were involved in shaping this plan, that was really at the forefront of their mind. And also wildfires. A lot of wildfires were happening. Drought, right? They were experiencing all these impacts of climate change and really looking at planning through that lens. So I think that was unique about this particular period. Yeah.
So I think when you brought up a lot of wildfires, and we just went through the devastation of Lahaina.
Yeah.
How do you think your book will help the people in the rebuilding of Lahaina? Do you think that there'll be any type of lessons that they can get from your book?
Well, the sense that you get from the book, well, first of all, a lot of the folks that were on the community advisory committee lived in Lahaina, grew up in Lahaina, were intimately connected with that area. And they had already been voicing concerns about fire hazard and about safety because there was limited access to the area in and out. And so you already saw people saying, hey, something bad could happen. We need to start to address this. And I hope that, and I'm kind of seeing as I talk to folks who are involved in the rebuilding of Lahaina, that that kind of safety concern is like front of mind, to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. Yeah.
So now, was there anything when you were listening to the public processes in Hawaii, was there anything that you learned?
Yeah, I think it was eye-opening for me to see how involved and organized large land developers are in the process. And I sort of knew that as a reporter, but I think following this particular process from beginning to end, you really see that though this is called a community plan, the development interests are very heavily involved. And what they want for the community is not necessarily what the community wants for itself. So that was eye-opening to me, more eye-opening. I sort of knew it was there, but I didn't realize that the people sometimes that are involved, you don't know that they work for the development company necessarily, unless it's revealed by somebody.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily transparent. So
Wow.
that was interesting to me.
So why do you think that the people should care about the public processes in Hawaii?
Because it's going to impact you. Yeah, it's going to impact all of us. It might not seem obvious. Sometimes it's obvious at the time. Sometimes it's not. But for example, when you approve some large developments along the shoreline, maybe the beaches, the parks that you used to go to, you might not have access to later. And it might not seem clear at that time. But over time, we've seen that play out a lot in Hawaii. But at some point, in some way, you or somebody you care about is going to be impacted by the decisions made in these. And I think people don't follow it because it is long. It requires a lot of participation. It can be boring. But it's important, and we should pay attention, and we should pay attention to who's involved.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think can change about the public process?
What I think some of the things that we should look at is transparency. Not in the sense that, all of these meetings were public and people were able to participate, but transparency in the sense of what I mentioned earlier. Some people who participate, you don't know what their interests really are, like who they're employed by, who they're working for, what they're working for. And so I would like to see ways in which that could be brought more to the forefront so that people following it understand what's happening. I think there's some disconnect between what the public wants, and time again you've seen this community is opposed to this, but in the end the decision is different than what they want. So there's a disconnect. How can we fix that? And I'm not a planner, but I would love to see planners and people studying planning to become involved in looking at, how do we tweak this to make sure that full-time residents' needs are front and center and their voices are represented and what decision is made in the end. Yeah.
So what aspects of this book are unique to West Maui?
So some of the things that I mentioned about, let me back up for a second. I think one of the things that is unique to West Maui is, Hawaii is known for its tourism, but my friend calls it hyper tourism. It's a little ramped up version of tourism. I think that's what West Maui is experiencing, and the discussions that happened during the plan, you can see people are really aware of that and they want to fix it. Like one thing I heard recently talking to a researcher at UH is everybody knows that a lot of the housing in Hawaii is like a good percentage of it, a big percentage of it is short-term housing. And he came from New York, and I said, is this normal? Because New York is also like a tourist destination. And he said, yeah, it's similar to Honolulu, but Maui, West Maui, and like Hawaii, for example, is in a league of its own. You know, so we got to look at that. It's like, whose future are we building? Why are we making the decisions for whom, you know? And it can't be for tourists only. It has to be first, I think, for full-time residents. So.
How did writing this book, how did it make you feel once you were done? How did you feel about it? And tell us a little bit about how you felt after writing your book.
At times I felt shocked. I think at times I felt shocked at just, again, this disconnect that we're talking about how you can have such an outcry from residents about how they want things, and yet the decisions made in the end are different from that. Yeah, and at times that also made me feel disappointed in our process and, you know, thought about like what we can do better. And then I think mostly I felt curious, like, why is this and what can we do about it? You know, and of course I felt relief because this was just a long, big process, but something that felt important, that it could be a resource for change, positive change.
So you said you have a 12-year-old son.
Yeah.
What do you now, after you wrote this book, what are you doing anything, or are you teaching your son anything for the future of this process, or is there anything that you're teaching him? At such a young age, I understand. You know, there's only certain things you can do at 12 years old, but
I think a lot of our approach to parenting him is leading by example. And in that way, my husband and I are very involved. We volunteer for a lot of different community causes, and he sees that. And I hope that he learns in that way that's important for him to be involved, you know? And yeah, I hope we're doing that. He definitely is a kid that's very empathetic and compassionate, and he cares a lot. So I could see him doing that. Yeah.
And so what do you hope that readers take away from your book?
That their participation matters, that everybody should pay attention to what's happening. If they hear of a community planning process happening in their community, that they should get involved to an extent that they can, or at the least follow it to see what's happening and help to shape it.
Well, I would like to say mahalo for joining us today.
Mahalo to you.
And until next time, mahalo, aloha, ahui ho.
Me kanani ku kila kila o Lahaina